Welcome back to the Kerbal Space Program. Here we are on the launch pad with the Apollo 2 rocket. Our engineers having looked at the Apollo 1 rocket and decided that it was just a fluke, couldn't find anything wrong. We believe the problem existed at this area right here, but we had already reinforced it with struts, so we're going to say that that was an isolated incident, can't happen again. That said, we are planning on taking our new rocket here, which has not successfully flown at all, to the moon, where we will orbit the moon and then hopefully not only land on the moon once, but if our fuel tolerances hold, we will hopefully make 2 landings. Of course, Jebediah with his crew underneath him, and Bob, the second most seasoned rocketeer, will be performing the moon landings, and Bill is here for some much needed experience. So without further ado, let's get this underway with better success than the last flight, and we will launch in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Bill and Bob, a little nervous as they have flashbacks to their previous flight. I do apologize, it'll probably get a little loud in here. I want to go in and look at the interior of the craft to see if there's any wobbling that might have caused those problems. Everything appears to look good. It is possible that we did lose our 2 rockets on the way up. It looked like they cleared the craft pretty completely, but it is possible that they might have damaged it. We're getting ready for our pitch over. We don't want to miss it this time like we did last time. Surprisingly maneuverable, this craft, to fall over on its side. Much easier than it was with the high-flying rocket. This is, of course, where things started to go bad last time. But everything seems to be in check. Our struts holding those apart. Our struts holding this together. Everything looks good. As we get ready to switch over to the map view to just see how we're doing here, I just want to power the engines down so we don't have more tragedy. We're looking at 42, so we're just going to keep going. A lot of shaking there. We're going to go ahead and pitch over to elongate our orbit a little bit. This craft surprisingly less thirsty than the other iteration I had made, which makes me worried that I might have left out some key components. Go ahead. Ship held together much better this time. Let's see what the... Holy goodness! That is quite the apoapsis. I was expecting an apoapsis of about 202 kilometers. We have far exceeded that with 445. Music sounding a little loud. We're just going to turn that down. I thought it might give us a break from the dead silence of me thinking. I don't know whether or not anybody cares one way or another, but when I was reviewing the flight data for one of the moon landings, 2 or 3 of them ago, when we fell over on that slope, and I was trying to make sure I had a wide enough base. I realized that it gets a little quiet in there, so threw some music on. Why not? Alright, so introduce us to our craft here. Well, let's go ahead and extend our panels. Now I do have it so that the panels should be set up to an action group, but I don't want to extend the panels of our LEM yet, and I do have our LEM panels on that same action group. So the service module here has multiple gravioli detectors so that we can grab data 8 times while we're flying around, whether it be around here or around the moon. Whereas our LEM has a few. I believe our LEM has 4 gravioli detectors, possibly 5. 5, I think. We also have batteries scattered around the outside of the ship. Normally I like the flat bottom battery underneath here, but we don't have that ability, so we don't. We have our comm tower, we have our junior docking bay, so that we can dock with our LEM. We have 1 fuel canister with a Poodle rocket in here, and we have a fair amount of monopropellant. I feel like in designing this I left off one of my RCS ports. I feel like I used to have 2 sets, which would be a design problem, but I think we'll be okay. They're not super vital. They are just kind of a backup in case we run out of monopropellant in the LEM when we go to dock up. Our LEM here, still encased inside of our rocket. We'll get a better look at it after we retrieve it, after our translunar injection burn. Let's go ahead and try to grab some gravioli readings here. Kerbin's water, we already have that, so it's only worth 1. We're in high in space here. Now, all of the fuel we have in the rocket underneath us exists solely to get us into a parking orbit, and then to get us to the moon. Once we are on our way to the moon, it will have no purpose, and we will jettison it in order to... Actually, we might be able to do this in one fell swoop, save a little fuel. Once we are on our way to the moon, this rocket really has no purpose. We're gonna have to go a little later than that, I think. Such a tall... .400's pretty good. Because we're not trying to intersect here, we are actually trying to end up in an orbit. My approach is going to be different than it has been in the past. 153, 105, oh, we were close. That looks pretty good. 149, 113. Bring that down. 151, and we got a pretty good inclination around the moon. I think that's going to be what I want to go with. It's 1182, which is a bit more than I was planning. I was only planning on, I believe, 300. 300, wow. 800. But this is doing it without creating a parking orbit around the planet, so that very well may still be within our tolerances. So we'll go ahead and prep that burn. It's probably about 90 seconds, I would reckon. So as you can see here, we have a normal decoupler attached to this engine, or this fuel and engine, and then we have a stack separator that is separating our docking port from our Poodle engine, and that should allow us to easily access our LEM. While this is going on, we'll try another attempt at our gravioli detector. Still over Kerbin's water. Looks like there's non-water below us, but what do I know? Plenty of fuel remains. Enough fuel remains that I might be able to actually use this engine to get into an orbit around the moon. As that counts down here. Oh, counts back up to 500. So above where we wanted, but honestly I was planning around 400, so that's not bad, and I was not planning to have anywhere near this much fuel left. Of course, what that means is that we won't be grabbing our LEM until later in the mission, but that's alright. That's why we keep these mission profiles open. Bob, very excited for the news that he does not need to climb into the LEM as early as we had told him he did. So we shall go ahead and sail on until our moon encounter, which will be at 3 hours, and escape is at 5 hours. We will try once again for a non-water. Highlands, excellent. Dupe. Apparently that's all I'm going to be able to grab. The Badlands! I'm impressed that I was able to pull that off. So, we do not want anything to go wrong with this mission for that fact and that fact alone. I think I even mentioned that in the last mission, was how awful it would be to have to try to grab things like the Badlands, and I specifically mentioned them. Not the last mission, the last mission that didn't end in a horrible explosion. The moon, little more than a mass of flags at this point. Kerbin Shores, yeah, I'll take that. Six minutes, we'll try for one last reading. Water we already have. Okay. We're going to want to spin this whole rig around to retrograde. Love the expressions. Jebediah very much at home at this point in the moon, trying to keep his crew calm. They are very much not at home right now. So again, it was my plan to, while we were still in the close influence of Kerbin, to climb into the Lem and show us around, but that's not the way it went, so I'm certainly not going to argue with it. Having extra fuel, I've never been one to argue that. And having extra fuel here means that we're going to have extra fuel in our tank when we're getting ready for our rendezvous, which is good because it means more fuel in our Lem should we be able to ascend off the surface. Now my concern about that is it's going to use both of these tanks really to land, and then we have just one tank up here for an ascent stage, which I can pump this fuel down here to try to get off, but that's a fair amount of extra weight I'd be relying on. So we really realistically need to have 10 extra units of fuel in order for me to consider that a viable option. But we'll tackle that when we get there. Here we go. We're coming up. Oh, we haven't crossed the threshold yet. Now we're under the influence of the moon. If we burn retrograde, realistically speaking, you don't want to be much higher than 70 kilometers around the moon to launch your LEM, and it's kind of hard to reach up to 40 degrees to capture to 40 kilometers to recapture your LEM. But if you're not circular, it allows a lot more flexibility when you launch your LEM in a low orbit to line up the two vessels for a better rendezvous. So I usually try to go for a periapsis to begin with at about 70 kilometers. And then bring the apoapsis down until it becomes a new periapsis of about 40 kilometers. Launch the LEM higher up. Sometimes I launch it lower down, but I don't know. It really depends on the circumstance and the kind of terrain I'm coming in, things like that. But if we can go ahead and fire this maneuver in an hour here to bring us down to 70, that'll bring us into great shape for to set us up. And this, honestly, this big frickin' engine might even be able to bring our apoapsis down too before I have to jettison it. My concern then, of course, will just be that that we're just going to have debris floating around the moon, and I really don't want that. But 3 live crew members versus 1 piece of debris around the moon really is a no-brainer for me. So let's fast forward the hour here. Finally, some smiles out of the 3 crewmen. We're actually going to take a quick break from that plan and try to grab a gravioli detection. Moon Midlands, I already have. Minutes, 27 minutes. One nice thing about this strategy is that we can actually set up an orbit around the moon that will be able to more easily cherry pick a landing zone, as opposed to just seeing what's available on the face as we're careening towards it, which is nice, you know, that's helpful. The Moon Highlands, we'll keep that. 50 seconds, we'll fire up. Coming around, coming around. Still a surprising amount of fuel left in this thing. I really am nervous about what makes this craft so much lighter than my previous one. I know that those 4 monopropellant hoses or nozzles aren't that heavy. Maybe Jebediah's just been on a diet and is losing some weight. I don't really know. Okay. So we used about 100 units of fuel for that. Spin this ship around, and we'll get ready to bring the apoapsis down on the other end. I think I'm actually going to take advantage of this as well to set up a good inclination to bring us over a crater we haven't been to. Quite possibly over 2 craters we haven't been to. Just so that we can get the most out of this possible double landing venture. There we go. Coming up over the far side crater, I'll try to grab a gravioli detection from there. I believe I already have the highlands from this one. It's the shores. Moon's highlands, yep, there they are. Moon's midlands. Apparently already have that one. Yeah, I'll keep it. I've got loads of these detectors. I can always choose to get rid of it later. Midland craters, excellent. So those two are full, those two are full, these two are full, which means both of these are empty. Yeah. I believe that's going to be the last thing of interest until we get over to Periapsis. Here we go. We'll fire that. And we're going to bring this down to around 30, knowing that it'll come up with our next maneuver here. Alright, I think if we were to do pole to pole, that would be a really nifty that would be huge right there. 700. That would flip us around, so let's not do that. We'll start easy. We'll start by trying to get over this southern crater here. No. Let's bring that down and that down. So that would make our primary landing zone this crater here. Oh, we've got a minute and 18 seconds to turn that way to make that true. Plenty of time. Oddly enough, even with the giant rocket on the bottom, it doesn't feel much less maneuverable than our high-flying rocket when we get to this point. 151 units, so this will likely burn out all of its fuel. It has served us very well. Frankly, I don't think this landing site would have been possible on this mission had this rocket not lasted this long. 81 units, we'll just open it up. Which currently brings us to within 9. Alright, so we're going to switch on our RCS thrusters. We're going to thrust down to try to bring this down to 0. There's no way. There's just no way. So we're going to jettison that. We didn't really get any good landing zones off of this. So we're going to try to do this quickly here. Alright, first out, Bob, out you go. Bob is going to let go. Bob's going to pull this up. Bob's going to try not to hit anything on his way over. Bob's going to come over, fly in, drop, drop, over. I'm going way too quick here. I should calm down. I'm not in any danger. I'm just trying to be quick. So let's go ahead and board. Alright. Next thing we want to do is we want to control from... Oh, did I put... No, I did. Okay, I was like, did I put batteries on the LEM? We're going to make sure that we're controlling from here. We're going to go ahead. We're going to decouple that. We're going to turn on our RCS thrusters. We're going to pull forward. We're going to turn off our RCS thrusters. We're going to spin 180 degrees. We're going to switch over to Bob here. Bob, we're going to rotate your craft. Oh, we're going to turn off your RCS thrusters, rotate your craft so we get a thing that makes sense. We're going to go back to our main ship here. We're going to turn on our lights. We're going to go back to Bob. We are going to set this as our target. We're going to pull on the RCS thrusters, we're going to switch to docking mode, and we're going to go get it. Now there is going to be a bit of debris between us and them. 90 seconds until we approach. Apparently these panels do not extend anymore because I'm part of a different ship, but that's okay. We get those out. Let's look at our resources. want to hit with our wings here. I've already used more fuel than I would like to during this, but it's been a while. This will be our first rendezvous for these videos. Kind of exciting. I didn't do the best job of getting that 180 degrees. Normally I do it prograde to retrograde, but I was trying to maintain the integrity of the burn we were executing when this all happened. Kind of a terrible set of angles I have here to go with. A really terrible set of angles. Switch to staging mode, give it a wiggle. There we go. We have capture. We're going to go ahead, turn off our RCS thrusters, take a look at our resources, pull open our map, flip us around. We're going to wait until our next pass. How close are we coming here? 9, that's going to be close. We're going to be whipping when we come back. So long as we don't crash, though. And we shouldn't pass under 9 kilometers. We'll be close to the ground, but I don't think we're going to hit anything. That'll be the plan. Let's go over here. Our staging is kind of weird here. We want to be very careful. Very careful. We're going to make sure that this engine is shut down. We're going to make sure that this engine is on. We're going to rotate our craft to get into position for this upcoming burn, which is admittedly a ways away. So to look at our LEM here, we have our 2 solar panels, which we're used to. We have our 4 landing legs, which we're used to. These are back to being the small ones. 2 fuel canisters here fuel our main landing engine. If we have a normal landing, the fuel here will be basically empty, and we'll be standing upright. And when we go to lift off from the moon, we'll decouple here. There is a small, or another LV909 engine in here with a single fuel tank. Now, the reason for that is because the Apollo missions left the legs behind and was able to take off. I realized that the rocket would be significantly lighter if I got rid of this engine, just had this thing of fuel, use this fuel to pump down to there, yada yada yada. But that wasn't what I was going for when I designed it. However, if our fuel tolerances are good when we land, that's exactly what we'll do. We're going to pump this fuel into these tanks and try to use this engine to get us off. We have 1 monopropellant gas canister here. Holds 160 units. So those of us who have been watching this series know that that fuel will probably come into use to pull us off of the surface one way or another. We have our 4 RCS thrusters, which makes it pretty maneuverable because it's a light ship. Normally I like to have a disc battery underneath the capsule. However, we don't have that technology available, so we have 2 batteries on either side. And then for science experiments, we have duplicates of our seismic data, our thermometers, our gravioli detectors. Actually, I think we have 4 of them. We've got things loaded with gravioli detectors. We have 2 goo canisters, so if we do have 2 landing sites, we can grab 2 different goo readings. We'd be able to grab our 2 crew reports. One thing I did not put on here, and I don't know what the hell I was thinking, I forgot to put a science lab on, a material lab. That's why my craft is so light. That really hurts. That hurts a lot. So obviously we will need to redesign this craft to encompass that. Science lab is relatively tall, would mess up the weight ratios of the lander. Hopefully that means we will have enough extra fuel here. But that is something that I somehow forgot. We'll still have the gravioli detectors, we'll have the seismic, we'll have the EVA, we'll have the sample. But I was hoping to crush our last mission of 800 science, and it doesn't look like I'll be doing that with this one because I don't have that extra bit. Really, Bob there can sense my disappointment in myself. But anyhow, moving on. We're already at 43 minutes. This is the longest it's taken us to get to the moon yet. Probably what I'm going to do is once we're established, I'm going to call it quits, call it a break, get myself a beverage, and that way there I can avoid having a video that is an hour and a half long. We'll just... Ooh! Alright, it canceled my warp because we're below 9 kilometers. As we are skimming above the surface, not made any less terrifying by the fact that it's the dark side, so I can't even see how close we are. But maybe that's for the best. They seem pretty happy about it. But yeah, so I figure once we're set up and ready to go, that's as good a breaking point as any. And then the actual landing will be a separate video. Coming up on 20 minutes now. 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. With a minute left, let's go ahead. We're going to make sure that this engine is off as it is. We're going to make sure this engine is on as it is. We're going to make sure we are controlling the vessel from here. All sorts of terror on the faces of our Kerbals. Coming up now on our burn, probably about a 30-second burn. Very disappointed in myself still. I'm just replaying how on earth I forgot to add the science bay. There we are. 41, 31. Apoapsis of 78. So let's do a quick recap of where I was hoping to be versus where I am, based on previous flights I have done, sandbox flights I have done, Again, never with this vessel, but just throwing that kind of data together, looking at the total mass of my ship. I was hoping to, at this point in time, have full batteries, which we do have. Monopropellant, I was hoping for 513 out of 520, so if we add 10 to that, I am 10 short on monopropellant. Liquid fuel, I was hoping for above 800. We have 1100 because our last stage lasted so long, so all of that looks good. I was hoping to have an apoapsis of 75, I believe. 67 is what I was hoping for, and I have 78, so I'm a little higher than I wanted. I was hoping for a periapsis of 35. I believe we said it was 41, so overall I am a bit higher, but I was expecting to have an orbital speed of 497, so I'm a little bit slower on that respect, which is good. The lower orbit is what I was hoping for. But again, if I dropped down 30 and had the same, then my orbital speed would be up. So we're pretty much where I want to be. Yeah, I think this is good. So this is where we will stop the video for today. 100 kilometers away from that. And when we come back for the next video, we will be hopefully landing in this crater here, and it'll be a grand old time, and everything will be great, and there will be much rejoicing and babies and all of that jazz. So thanks for watching, and I will see you momentarily.